Senator Welch just cornered Attorney General Bondi in what may be the most damaging exchange of her confirmation hearing. What started as questions about health care quickly escalated into a brutal confrontation over voting rights investigations, missing FBI money, and selective answers about pending litigation. This wasn't just political theater. It was a systematic dismantling of Bondi's credibility in real time.
All right, well, this actually is important to all of us. And the lament I have is that if this health care goes away, this premium support, it is really going to hurt families in red states and blue states. And in Vermont, I mean, we voted Democratic, but we have a lot of good folks who voted for President Trump, and their health care is jeopardized. And there's a November 1 deadline that is coming up. And the reason I'm saying this is that I think it's important for us to try to work out together a resolution that's going to be beneficial to people you care about in Florida and voted for President Trump, and people I care about in Vermont who voted in some cases for Vice President Harris and some for President Trump. So it's not just Democrats not wanting to negotiate. And in fact, we do want to negotiate, and that's why I'd encourage the president to encourage my colleagues on the Republican side to sit down with us and try to see if we can make some progress. Another topic, with the respect to voting rights in the letter that your voting rights chief sent out, we got one in Vermont, and it's a demand to get all the information on the voting file. And in that letter, in the announcement of that letter, the chief indicated an apprehension about the voting process being taken over by, quote, the left. Now, do you have any information with respect to Vermont about a takeover of the voting process by, quote, the left?
Senator, I'm not familiar with what you're referring to. We are currently involved in voter roll lawsuits in 6 states. Is that what you're referring to?
No, there's a letter that went out demanding that states, including Vermont, provide all the voting file information,
Right.
includes personal information. But when that letter was sent out—
That's perfectly legal.
but there was an assertion by the chief in this division that this was to deal with the fact that the voting process has been taken over by the left. So we got one of those letters in Vermont. And my question to you is, what do you mean by the left? And do you have any evidence that the so-called system has been overtaken by the left?
We must have fair and free elections.
No, I know that. But I'm asking for the specific basis.
And we will have fair and free elections in this country.
Okay,
Senator, I'd be happy to talk to my chief. Who was it who said that?
It was your chief, which I assume you would know who that is. Here's the question here, okay? There is a point of view that is in dispute here about the fairness of elections. But you have the power as the as the Attorney General to use the authority of your office to make demands on states. And you did that with Vermont. That's within your right to do it. I'm not disputing your legal authority to do it.
Is Vermont disputing turning over the information to our office?
Vermont is. The Secretary of State is. And you can resolve that with her. And
we have every right to have that information.
Yeah, here's
Senator.
where I'm going.
Why wouldn't they want to turn it over?
You're a prosecutor with the awesome authority to make the decision that you're going to start an investigation against the state or against an individual. And I know from your experience as a county prosecutor and as the Attorney General in Florida, you took seriously that obligation to have a factual basis before you'd proceed, right?
Senator, I take that role, I take my oath very seriously.
All right, so what I'm
and I
asking—
take fair and free elections in this country very seriously. And that information, our office is entitled to have that information. And we are involved in litigation on that, and I assume we'll be involved in litigation with Vermont.
We have a Republican governor in Vermont. We had our former Republican governor was the treasurer for many years, and also the secretary state with election responsibility. What I'm asking is, do you or does your head of this voting section have any factual basis that you can point to that justifies your demand that Vermont turn over all this confidential voting rights information?
Well, it would remain confidential with my office, and you just said that you have a Republican governor, so it doesn't make sense what you just said. We've asked that of every state, Senator.
Right, and I'm asking about Vermont and what the factual basis is, but we can move on. You've mentioned that you can't discuss pending litigation, and I think the committee by and large accepted that answer. But I did notice that you spoke at great length about pending litigation, specifically with respect to the questions Senator Cruz asked you about the sentencing of the Kavanaugh defendant. That's pending, right?
He was sentenced to 8 years.
I understand that, but that's on appeal, right?
We will be appealing.
Right, so that makes it pending litigation. So you made an exception with respect to the Cruz questions.
Hold on. No,
but you didn't answer any of the questions that you said were pending at litigation from any of my colleagues.
Those were facts that came out at the sentencing hearing. You're welcome to see the transcript of the sentencing hearing
I understand
with all the
that.
gruesome details of what they threatened to do to Justice Kavanaugh and other justices.
I condemn what that person did.
That was the sentencing.
But the point here is that that's pending litigation. You indicated you're going to be appealing. It's your right to do that. And you would not, you use that justification to not answer many other questions.
Justification? You're an attorney, Senator.
Okay.
You realize that.
I do want to go back to Homan. You know, there's a tape, right, with Mr. Homan? I mean, first of all, is there a tape that has audio and video of the transfer of the $50,000?
You would have to talk to Director Patel about that.
No, I'm talking to you.
I don't know the answer, Senator.
Yeah, you do know the answer to that.
Don't call me a liar.
I didn't call you a liar.
You just said I know the answer. I said I don't know the answer.
Well,
you have to talk to Director Patel.
What
I said is that investigation was closed.
If you don't know, why don't you know whether there was a tape and video?
Senator, I believe that was resolved prior to my confirmation as Attorney General.
Do you think that it is of public interest for the people to know what happened to the $50,000 that the FBI turned over to Homan?
Did you hear what I just said? That was resolved prior to my confirmation as Attorney General. That's why I said I would not know.
It's not resolved. There's $50,000. Homan has it, or somebody has it. Do you have no interest in knowing where it is?
You're not going to sit here and slander Tom Homan. The FBI and Deputy Director Blanche said there was nothing.
I'm not slamming Tom Homan. He got the $50,000.
Tom Homan is doing, how do you know that? Tom Homan is doing a great job, as our borders are, keeping your border state safe. You're a border state.
What Senator Welch accomplished in this exchange wasn't just tough questioning. It was a masterclass in exposing the gap between legal authority and factual justification. He methodically cornered Bondi on 3 fronts that reveal how power can be wielded without accountability. First, the voting rights investigation. When Welch pressed Bondi about her office's demand for Vermont's voter files, her response was telling. She couldn't provide any factual basis for targeting Vermont specifically, yet defended the investigation by claiming authority to have the information. This is classic overreach, using legal power as justification rather than evidence. When a prosecutor demands sensitive voter data while claiming the system has been taken over by the left without proof, it transforms law enforcement into political warfare. The double standard on pending litigation was equally damaging. Bondi repeatedly refused to answer questions by citing pending cases, then gave detailed commentary about the Kavanaugh case sentencing also pending on appeal. Welch caught this inconsistency perfectly. Selective transparency isn't transparency at all. It's political calculation disguised as legal principle. Most revealing was the missing FBI money confrontation. $50,000 transferred to Tom Homan simply vanished from official accountability. When Welch pressed for basic facts, was there a recording? Where did the money go? Bondi claimed ignorance while simultaneously defending Homan's character. You can't credibly protect someone you claim to know nothing about. This pattern suggests willful blindness, where officials avoid inconvenient facts to maintain plausible deniability. The healthcare opener was strategic genius. Welch established his good faith by focusing on bipartisan concerns, families losing healthcare coverage regardless of how they voted. This framing made Bondi's later evasions look purely political rather than principled. When someone starts by seeking common ground and ends up being stonewalled, it exposes who's really being partisan. Bondi's defensive reactions. Don't call me a liar. Accusations of slandering Homan revealed someone used to political rallies, not legal accountability. In courtrooms, prosecutors must answer to judges and juries. In Congress, they answer to the people. The skills aren't transferable when you're accustomed to friendly audiences rather than adversarial questioning. This exchange demonstrates why Senate hearings matter, not for the theater, but for the moments when nominees must choose between transparency and loyalty, between factual accuracy and political convenience. Welch forced those choices into the open, and Bondi's responses showed where her priorities lie. Democracy requires officials who can distinguish between having authority and having justification, between legal power and legitimate purpose. When that distinction disappears, law enforcement becomes indistinguishable from political enforcement. Welch's questioning wasn't just about Bondi. It was about whether we still expect our prosecutors to be guided by evidence rather than ideology.